The day began like any other, soft sunlight sneaking through the blinds, the smell of coffee filling the kitchen, and the faint hum of the city outside their apartment window. She stood barefoot on the cold tiles, holding her mug with both hands, watching the steam rise and twist like a fragile secret. Everything felt calm, almost too calm, the kind of morning where nothing seems wrong, but something in the air feels slightly off, like a picture hung just a little crooked. Her husband was sitting at the table, half distracted, scrolling through his phone with the same absent-mindedness he'd always had. It was such an ordinary sight, but something in her chest stirred, a quiet discomfort she couldn't name. When his phone buzzed again, he smiled, a small, fleeting curve of his lips that wasn't meant for her. He tilted the screen away, thumb moving quickly before locking it. She noticed it. She noticed everything. The way his shoulders tensed, the way he cleared his throat and tried to act casual. For a moment, she told herself not to overthink. They'd been together long enough for comfort to replace the butterflies, for routine to settle where passion once lived. Maybe it was just a work message, a joke from a friend, nothing more. Still, the sound of that notification stayed in her ears, ringing louder than his voice when he asked her about her day. As the day went on, the memory of that moment followed her like a shadow. She found herself glancing at the clock more than usual, wondering if he'd call, wondering if he was thinking about her at all. It wasn't jealousy she felt. It was the quiet ache of uncertainty. When trust begins to slip, it doesn't fall all at once. It frays thread by thread in the small silences and the half-finished conversations. That night, she watched him from across the couch, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone again. He laughed softly, and the sound should have been comforting, but instead, it tightened something inside her. Later, when he went to take a shower, he left his phone on the counter. The message popped up again, a single line glowing on the screen. The words were simple, almost innocent, yet her heart sank. It wasn't what the message said that broke her. It was what it didn't say, the tone, the familiarity, the warmth behind those few words. She could feel it. She didn't touch the phone, didn't scroll, didn't dare read further. She just stood there, frozen, her breath shallow, her reflection in the dark window staring back at her like a stranger. The air around her thickened, her heart pounding with the rhythm of realization she wasn't ready for. That night, she lay beside him in silence, listening to his even breathing, pretending sleep, while her mind replayed that moment over and over. The message lingered between them like a ghost neither of them could see but both could feel. The days that followed felt longer, heavier, stretched thin by uncertainty. She tried to hold on to the rhythm of normalcy, making breakfast, folding laundry, asking about his meetings. But even the simplest acts felt hollow. He was there, physically present, yet his energy drifted somewhere far from her reach. His laughter came at strange times, and his silences grew longer, lingering in the spaces between words. Every time his phone buzzed, she felt her pulse quicken, though she forced herself to keep her eyes fixed elsewhere. The once familiar comfort of his voice, the small touches they used to share, all began to feel rehearsed, like he was reading from a script written by someone else. At night, she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, tracing the lines of their life together in her mind. The late dinners, the shared jokes, the plans they made that now felt like faded sketches of a dream. She began questioning everything. Had she missed the signs? Had the distance started before that message? Or had that message simply revealed what was already broken? Every word he spoke sounded different now, heavy with meaning she couldn't decipher. His apologies for being busy or tired felt too polished, too deliberate, and every time she tried to bring up how she felt, his tone would shift to calm reassurance, but his eyes, they gave him away. They no longer met hers fully. They flickered away as if afraid of being seen. She started noticing the smaller things. The cologne that wasn't his usual scent, the slight hesitation when she reached for his hand, the way he'd turn his phone face down on the table. Each observation became another piece of a puzzle she didn't want to solve. The house that once felt like a sanctuary now felt foreign, filled with invisible walls and silent questions. Even her own reflection seemed different, as if grief had quietly settled in her features before she had the courage to name it. There were moments when she'd catch herself wanting to believe it was all in her head. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe work was consuming him. She tried cooking his favorite meal one evening, setting the table the way she used to when things were easier. But when he arrived home, he barely noticed. His eyes were tired, his voice distracted, his phone lighting up in the corner. She smiled anyway, pretending not to feel the sting, pretending not to notice when he excused himself for a quick call that lasted almost half an hour. The quietness between them deepened until it felt like another person living in the house. Every conversation became careful, filtered, stripped of warmth. Even laughter, when it came, sounded strained, mechanical. She started writing in her journal again, filling pages with questions she couldn't ask out loud. Each word bled with confusion and fear, each line a small confession to herself that something sacred had shifted. And though she didn't yet know the full truth, she could already feel its weight pressing down, inch by inch, suffocating the love they once shared. The truth didn't come crashing down all at once. It slipped quietly into her world, carried by something small and unassuming. One evening, while gathering laundry, she found a folded piece of paper tucked inside his jacket pocket. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it, half hoping it was nothing, half knowing it was everything. The handwriting wasn't his. The words were brief but intimate, the kind that didn't need to say much to say it all. Her knees weakened, and for a moment the world tilted. She sank onto the edge of the bed, the paper still in her hand, the air thick with the sound of her heartbeat. It wasn't anger that came first. It was disbelief, followed by a hollow ache that settled deep in her chest. That night, when he came home, she couldn't look at him the same way. The weight of what she knew pressed behind her eyes, but she said nothing. She moved through the evening in silence, watching him, as if trying to memorize the version of him she once loved, the one who laughed easily, who held her close without hesitation. But that man was gone, replaced by someone she could no longer reach. His presence now felt like a shadow, moving through the rooms without warmth or sincerity. She wanted to ask him why, but the question caught in her throat. Words felt useless in the face of something so quietly devastating. In the following days, she withdrew into herself. She stopped asking where he was going, stopped waiting for explanations that never came. She spent her evenings sitting by the window, staring at the city lights, wondering how something as simple as a message could dismantle years of shared life. Sometimes she caught him watching her, as if he knew she had found out, but even then he said nothing. The silence between them became unbearable, a heavy, invisible wall that neither had the courage to break. The house felt colder, emptier, as if it too had absorbed the truth and decided to grieve with her. She started to rediscover small pieces of herself in the quiet, the music she once loved, the books she had abandoned, the long walks she used to take before she became we. Pain, in its strange way, gave her clarity. She realized she had spent months trying to hold together something that was already slipping away. The tears came, but they weren't out of weakness. They were a release, a cleansing. She packed slowly, deliberately, each item folded with care, each memory faced with a kind of bittersweet acceptance. When she finally left, she didn't slam the door or shout. She simply placed her keys on the table, took one last look around, and walked away. The night air was cool against her skin, carrying both sadness and relief, and as she stepped into the quiet street, she felt the ache of loss, but also the faint, trembling pulse of freedom, proof that even after being broken, she still had the strength to begin again.